I call on the Taoiseach Minister for Treasury to move item 1.
Thank you, Mr President. I'd like to thank the Chief Minister for calling this urgent sitting of Tynwald to discuss the current concerns regarding energy prices and the cost of living on our island. This sitting was rightly postponed from last week as our nation mourns the loss of Her Majesty the Queen and celebrated the proclamation of King Charles III as Lord of Man. It is vitally important that we, as representatives of our constituents, have the opportunity to debate the issues that affect us all, to agree a way forward, and to openly discuss both the measures taken now and, importantly, measures for the future. On the 24th of February, Russia invaded Ukraine in a major escalation of a war that began in 2014. The invasion caused Europe's largest refugee crisis since World War II, and the Manx people have welcomed those fleeing the conflict into our community. Our government have responded with humanitarian assistance and played their part in supporting a comprehensive range of economic sanctions against the Putin regime. But as this conflict has progressed, we've witnessed the destabilising effects it has had around the world. We've seen the impact of Russia's decision to interrupt gas supplies to Europe. Wholesale natural gas prices are significantly higher than at the beginning of last year. The unprecedented volatility of energy prices of a kind not seen in the 1970s has directly affected every single household and every single business on our island. It has also had a knock-on effect to food production, transport and domestic inflation more generally. The free market in natural gas is broken and has undermined all existing hedging strategies. At a time of global instability, threat and conflict, it is government's role to provide certainty and security. This is the reason why I stand before you today to move this motion. I would like to thank all members for attending the meeting held on the 16th of August. You shared your concerns and ideas, as well as those of your constituents, and contributed to the process of setting out some clear policies for us to help each other through the winter months and meet the challenges that lie ahead. I would like to thank you for your contribution and ongoing input. We must be ready to adapt to new challenges in the months ahead and realise that the current situation may remain uncertain over an extended period. This motion marks the start of a longer process to strengthen our communities, buy them time to adjust and adapt, and accelerate some of the ambitions for a more sustainable and secure economy which benefits all those who call this island their home. Much like our approach to COVID, which was to buy time until vaccines became widely available, our approach here is also to flatten the curve. Like COVID, there was no consensus on how long this volatility and high levels of inflation might be with us, so we must plan for the long term. The government's initial response to the current humanitarian and economic situation is based on a 6-point strategic plan which together form a concerted raft of policies spanning all government departments and statutory boards, which allows us to work with the private sector and our vitally important charities and voluntary groups. Our response needs to be an island response. Key to the financial response is the provision of universal benefits for all our community, including the business sector. This is our first major area of intervention. The pressures we are experiencing are faced by everyone, but often in different ways, and our responses has to be comprehensive. By intervening to freeze energy prices for the next 6 months, we are directly minimising what would have otherwise been a major blow to households and businesses, but also providing certainty for everyone to plan. And as electricity is a utility used by us all, this certainty will allow informed choices to be acted upon. We do not want anyone to go cold or hungry this winter. Electricity gives us the means to boil a kettle, heat a meal, warm a bed, or keep a small room warm, even if heating the whole house or flat is a challenge. Twinned with universal interventions for every household and every business, such as freezing electricity prices, reducing fuel duty and capping public transport charges. It is our second major policy area, which is further targeted financial support to help those most vulnerable to sudden price shocks. We have rolled out an extensive package of support to those most vulnerable in society and those already known to need help. We have agreed 2 tranches of support already and will continue to monitor those groups closely. It may be that we also have to look more generally at targeted support for those not historically needing any additional help. And these 2 responses, universal interventions for everyone and targeted support for those most at need, will continue to be developed. The scale of inflation is such, however, that governments cannot intervene to help everyone. We must all adapt and adjust to a new environment of uncertainty and higher energy prices, all households and all businesses. This is why programmes are already underway to consolidate advice and guidance. The best way to reduce energy costs is to use less energy. Practical support, advice and the provision of assistance, such as loft insulation, will make a real difference. A comprehensive campaign will encourage and enable individuals and businesses to reduce their energy use and become more efficient, not just for this winter, but for the years ahead, as we maintain our focus on the ambitious targets we have set to reduce emissions and meet our net zero carbon targets. Our third intervention area is improving this information and guidance, consolidating and working with the third sector to ensure we can promote best practice to help everyone reduce their energy consumption. Our fourth priority is extending the support government provides to help households and businesses adapt their energy usage over the longer term through improved efficiencies. Expand support for households and businesses is now being finalised. The fifth and sixth parts of this strategic plan form the foundations for everything we hope to achieve, to maintain our economy and prepare safety nets to ensure our social cohesion and the intrinsic goodness of our community is not damaged by these external threats and pressures. Over the last 2 years, our island has endured and survived the global pandemic. During the height of COVID-19, we had to close down to protect our most vulnerable and the ability for our NHS to care for them. Now we must do the opposite. We must keep going, maintain consumer confidence, employment and support our local economy as we weather the storm fuelled by a war in Europe. We have already seen businesses rise to the challenge. Local financial groups have supported their staff with cash bonuses. The cafe at the NSC has offered half-price meals for children over the summer. Many larger firms have been able to absorb costs, but we will remain in close contact with those small and medium-sized businesses which remain the foundations of our local economy and work with them to support our community. Manx Utilities is a statutory board owned by the taxpayer. In the months up to the end of March, it absorbed £20 million of extra costs to stabilise prices, and when it needed to raise them, this was in an appropriate and staged approach. The extra costs since then are estimated to be up to £12 million. The Chair and Board have liaised closely with the Council of Ministers to maintain the future viability of the business, whilst protecting our island from the sort of massive price hikes we have seen affect other countries. By freezing electricity prices at current levels, we can provide certainty and security for everyone who lives and works here. The total cost is difficult to accurately calculate and will depend on gas price movements. The motion before court would provide a cash injection in the form of a loan from the Consolidated Loans Fund of up to £26 million, supplementing the measures that have been and will be taken by the MUA. This intervention flattens the peak of electricity prices over the winter months. Prices will need to rise gradually next year, and the repayments of this loan could add another £17 per year to the average household bill over the next 2 decades. Now is the time to energise our plans to develop renewable sources of sustainable energy for our island, strengthening our own energy security and weakening our dependence on imported fossil fuels. The Chief Minister has already announced plans to commission 20 megawatts of renewable energy on the island by 2026, and this development is already underway. We have already reduced fuel duty following this year's budget and will continue to honour any VAT or further duty reductions introduced by the UK Government as part of our reciprocal agreement. But our universal intervention will go further. Recognising that transport costs are a major driver of inflation, the trial £2 capped bus fare this winter will provide a viable alternative to for those commuting to work. It will slash the single adult fare into Douglas from Port Erin and Peel down from £2.70 and the trip from Ramsey from £3.10. The recently announced revised timetable will provide resilience for our public transport service and help us reduce CO2 emissions while keeping money in people's pockets to spend locally and support our local businesses. Some honourable members have called for free public transport. We must ensure that all the initiatives we introduce are affordable and, importantly, that they are sustainable. Someone will always have to pay for the cost of a bus network. It is already subsidised and must have the capacity to respond to increased demands while also allowing the encouragement of active travel. I would like to thank Minister Thomas and his colleagues at the DOI for their continued policy development and commitment to analyse the results of this intervention and use them to create further initiatives to support our island nation. Everyone uses electricity, but we know that about half of our homes are heated with gas and the other half with oil. Targeted support will allow those most vulnerable to the significant price increases we've already experienced to pay their bills, heat their homes and continue to put food on their table. £6.3 million has already been provided in direct support to a wide section of our community. Winter bonuses, an additional winter bonus, variable rate winter bonuses, energy support payments, variable rate energy support payments and long-term benefit support payments have already been received by over 22,000 households. At October Tynwald, I will give honourable members a further economic update and, as announced, commence a further round of the £300 energy support payment to 3,500 households. And 6,000 families who receive child benefit will be automatically issued with an additional family support payment of up to £300 for those with one child and higher payments for those with larger families. There will also be a third tranche of these support payments in December, clearly dedicated to meeting the increasing cost of living for many of our lower income households. Government recognise that as the high energy price persists, they begin to seep into more and more households on our island, spreading concerns and anxiety. Treasury are developing further support packages for pensioners, those with disabilities and long-term illness, and those on low or medium incomes who don't claim benefits but are equally affected by these winter pressures. Some honourable members are concerned by the significant cost of these interventions. We must ensure that all of this is properly calculated and does not derail our ambitions for reform of our tax and benefits system and our capital programme to invest in critical national infrastructure such as our schools and health service. We also have a long-term economic strategy which this Honourable Court will be debating in November and must consider the long-term impact of taking action, but also the real risks of not taking action. All these factors will be included in our medium to long-term financial plan and incorporated into February's budget. But the reality is that government alone cannot solve this problem for everyone. We must all adjust and adapt, and help will be provided to enable individuals and families to make the right decisions to reduce their energy use and take back control over their bills. Government will introduce widespread information campaigns backed by free energy visits from energy doctors accessible by all. I'm grateful to Minister Lord Brennan and the staff at the Cabinet Office for their work to coordinate this aid for our community. Multiple departments will expand and accelerate public and private schemes to support the reduction of energy use for households and businesses. This £8 million initiative will include expanding energy saving programmes enabling greater business energy reduction support. We will also support local authorities to improve their housing stock. Legislative changes may need to be agreed by this Honourable Court so that bulk purchases of loft insulation and draft excluders can be distributed as soon as possible to homes across the island before the cold weather really starts. In addition, we will revise the Green Living Grant allocations for those who claim benefits most, for those who can benefit most from new forms of space heating. Minister Barber and her DEFRA colleagues have already built on their existing resources and expertise to quickly scale up their capacity to help. Key to our resilience is support for our local economy. As during the pandemic, we have to maintain employment and protect economic activity to minimise future hardships to households and businesses. Despite the alarmist TV and radio broadcasts from across and the doom scrolling provided by social media, it's important to foster and nurture consumer and business confidence. We have capped electricity prices for businesses and supported households to spend locally. Through promoting existing schemes and revitalised funding for events, we can enable local companies to adapt their business models to survive. We will continue close dialogue and communication with all employers on the island. We will listen, and where appropriate, we will act. Our initial support has been for individuals, for households and for businesses, and we will continue to look at the whole of our island as the situation develops. Last week, the new British Prime Minister, the Honourable Liz Truss, announced proposals which mirror our own. The details of the UK price cap have just been announced and are designed to reduce the fear of runaway prices and help combat increasing inflation. Tomorrow, their Chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng, will outline further measures which we will monitor and respond to. But as we do this, we must ensure access to key services and ensure that support is ready and available for individuals who are most vulnerable and businesses who are most critical to our wider economy. A newly formed community support fund with an initial allocation of £100,000 will allow the Cabinet Office to directly help the third sector help others. This will provide warm space initiatives to tackle the twin dangers of fuel poverty and loneliness. We will work with our energy providers to prevent disconnections, expand and strengthen the lists of vulnerable residents, expand access to local mental health support, and combat anxiety, isolation and reduce fear. We recognise that fuel poverty is intimately related to poor health outcomes and will work with Manx Care to ensure there is support to protect people's physical health and mental well-being. It is essential that as politicians, government and Tynwald, we get the balance right and respond to the world as we find it, not as we wish it to be. The coming months will present multiple challenges and we will need to respond quickly, effectively and appropriately. We will need to deal with the short-term priorities whilst never losing sight of our long-term commitments enshrined in our island plan to create a fairer, more sustainable, equal and prosperous island which benefits all. Today this motion continues our battle to protect our community, our economy and our hopes for the future against the threats from war, misinformation, market manipulation and inflation. We are not sure how long the current situation will last, but the motion before us provides those 6 foundations for certainty, for security and for hope. Mr. President, I move that this Honourable Court notes the global inflationary pressures and price volatility facing our island and supports the actions which need to be taken to mitigate the effects for the people, businesses and economy of the Isle of Man. I move that Tynwald authorises the Treasury to transfer £26 million from the Reserve Fund into the Consolidated Loan Fund and further authorises a loan to Manx Utilities for an amount up to £26 million to be repaid within a period set by Treasury and to be funded from the Consolidated Loan Fund to enable the authority to cap electricity prices at their current levels until the 31st of March 2023 for all customers. I further move that Tynwald supports the capping of bus fares at a maximum of £2 per journey for a 3-month trial starting on the 1st of November, supports a third round of targeted support payments in December for those in receipt of child benefit and those on low incomes, supports accelerating an £8 million programme to improve energy efficiency in homes, and supports the establishment of a community support fund. Mr. President, I beg to move the motion in my name.